Hey everyone, it's Raphael from XX Raphael Productions, and today I'm going to be talking about The Flash's latest episode, Armageddon Part 4. So, we actually only have one more episode left before the Armageddon event concludes, alright? So, before we get into the video, obviously there's going to be spoilers, so this is your warning. Alright, so let's get into the main episode discussion, and just before we get into the spoilers, I do want to say that this episode did feel weaker than the previous two episodes, and there's like a couple of reasons for that, but one thing is definitely the pacing. So, for episodes 2 and 3 of Season 8, which is Armageddon Part 2 and 3, pacing was very good, and the episode quality, it really did feel like a step up from Armageddon Part 1. So, I will save like my main thoughts on the whole event when Part 5 is released, which is the ending of the Armageddon event. So, as of right now though, I do think Part 1 was quite weak, but Part 2 and 3 really stepped it up, and this episode though kind of lost the momentum a little bit. So, the good stuff though, let's get into it. Damien Darhk, the villain of Arrow Season 4, came back for this episode, and he was great as usual. And then we had Barry as well, trying to figure out how to navigate the situation in 2031 where all of Team Flash is under, I guess they're all trusting Eobard Thawne, because, you know, this episode does showcase a lot of how petty Thawne truly is, and he went as far as to rewrite almost the entire timeline so that he becomes the Flash instead of Barry, and it's kind of like, you know, a reverse situation where Barry is the reverse Flash instead. So that also explains why in the previous episode you could see how angry Team Flash looked when they saw Barry time travel to the future now. So it's also revealed that Reverse Flash is the one that killed Joe. I mean, it was revealed in the last episode actually, but they really did show what happened here. So Thawne sped past Joe, knocked him into the tracks, and that's how he got killed, alright? So at least we saw it like on screen and as to how it happened. Now, it does bring a couple of questions though with regards to the timeline changes, but I mean, we'll get into that later because it's going to be a lot of details. So yeah. Now, the pacing definitely suffered in this episode because they focused a bit too hard on the life of Team Flash in 2031, because look, this timeline is definitely going to be erased anyway, so it's kind of like it feels pointless to, especially the scenes with, you know, Ryan Choi, Allegra, and what's his name again? Chester. So it's like these scenes could have been cut out and we really wouldn't have missed anything else except for, like, I know they're trying to tease that this might have happened in like the present day, but like, I mean, I guess they're trying to set up the future plot lines of Season 8, and I guess it's gonna say that Allegra and Chester might get together in this season, but all I'm trying to say is that these stuff could have been like saved as a revelation rather than revealing it all in this episode, because it really cost the episode a lot of wasted time. So in regards to that as well, the drama, relationship drama was unbearable as usual. Like, I mean, look, come on, it's the CW, so I didn't really expect much when it comes to relationship drama, so I guess that's to be expected, really. And Ryan Choi now, I don't know whether Ryan Choi will have a bigger role in Part 5, but as of this episode, though, I do think that his role was disappointing. Now, I know in my video back in November, right before Season 8 was released, I did say in that video that Ryan Choi coming back would be great, because the last time we saw Ryan Choi was in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and we didn't really see much of him to show why he would be a Paragon. So I was hoping that this main event, this crossover, would like go deeper into that. But all we got really from Ryan Choi was he was complaining about love, and also he did have a couple fight scenes, but nothing too special. So that was a bit of a disappointment when it came to Ryan Choi's character, especially as you remember, he is a Paragon from the Crisis, alright? So, now speaking of Damien Darhk, now, Damien Darhk was great. Like, the actor does a great job, and he was also, like, I guess, like, you know how Barry had to try to act evil, and then Damien, like, finds it out, and he eventually starts to choke Barry. Like I said before, like in Arrow Season 4, he was intimidating, and now in this season, he continues to be intimidating as well. So, just like in Legends, well, I'm sorry, not Legends of Tomorrow, I know he's in Legends of Tomorrow as well, so I know, like, many people like him in that show. I haven't really watched Legends of Tomorrow, so I can't really judge him there, but I have seen Arrow Season 4, and I know Damien was intimidating in that season. Even if the writing suffered, he was still a great villain. So yeah, seeing him in this episode was a nice surprise. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise because I know that before the season was released, they did say Damien would be part of the Armageddon event. So I guess I'm still saying that it was great to see him in this episode, and also he actually played a role in helping Barry fix this this problem. So like Barry, speaking of Barry being the Reverse Flash, he did play a convincing like evil role. I know he's trying to act evil, but he did a good job at that. Like I know we've seen this with Savitar before, so there's no like question as to Grant Gustin's acting skills. He's great at that as well. So now let's look at Reverse Flash's suit though, because that's one thing I wanted to discuss about. Like I actually did prefer the older suit. Like I'm sorry, but when I looked at Reverse Flash's suit here, like the new suit where it's kind of like it's mirroring Season 8 Barry's suit, I couldn't take it seriously. It looked like it just really didn't fit Tom Cavanagh's head at all. Now, I was browsing Reddit about this episode. Many people thought that Matt Letcher would look better in that suit, and I think I honestly would agree with that. Like, now this episode had a good opportunity to show Thawne's like anger and pettiness towards Barry, but I did feel that it would have been better if Matt Letcher was the actor. Now, I do sound like a broken record, constantly saying that I wish Matt Letcher came back onto the show, but he really, really would have portrayed this better in regard, especially when Thawne had the breakdown and was, he was yelling at Barry, "Who's faster now?" You know what I mean? Like, if you rewatch the Flashpoint episode in Season 3, you see Matt doing something very similar when he says, "Now, who's the villain, Flash?" So you can see the how great the acting was, and he really, really like portrayed the immense hate that Thawne has for Barry, because especially if you've seen how petty Thawne was in this episode where he literally rewrote the entire timeline and stole Barry's life, so we can see that he really hates him so much, but I feel like Matt portrays that hate a lot better than Tom does. Like, Tom Cavanagh works well for the Season 1 version of Thawne where he grew fond of Team Flash, but in regards to the evil, hateful, rage-filled Thawne, I think Matt is still he's still the greatest when it comes to that. So that's why I was saying that we should bring back Matt in my previous video. So I will leave that down in the description below if you want to hear about that as well. So yeah, let's get into the actual episode, the rest of it. So despite a lot of things that happened in this episode, I still think that it was weaker than parts 2 and part 3. I did say this in the beginning, but now I'll go into detail about it. So it feels like let's see. So it feels like the best way I can describe it is that a lot of things happened and nothing happened at the same time. That's the feeling I got as the episode ended. Now, in episodes 2 and 3, I felt the intensity. I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen next, But after this episode dropped, or I kind of lost the momentum, I was just like, oh, that's it? Oh, okay. That was my reaction after it ended. I was just like, oh, that happened. I don't know, something about this episode was lacking. Episodes 2 and 3 had that awe factor, but in this one it was lacking something to keep it from being a great episode. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad episode. It was a good episode, but it wasn't to the level of the previous 2 episodes. Part 1, Armageddon Part 1 was not good, so I'd say that this episode was better than Part 1, but worse than Part 2 and Part 3. Alright, so another thing I'd like to say about is Showblane coming back as well. Now, I did say in Season 7 that I didn't really care about Showblane's character, so I guess seeing him back here was a bit I wasn't excited at all to see his character again, but I did like how Damien Darhk called him chill lame. That was actually pretty funny. I actually laughed at that. But yeah, I'm saying before, that's just how good of a character Damien Darhk is, and I hope we do see Dark in Part 5, which, looking from the episode promotion, I do think that Damien will be in that episode as well. So, yeah. And as regards to the plot twist where Barry had to cause Armageddon as a result of Reverse Flash tampering with the timeline and ruining Barry's life, I like the plot twist, and also it shows Despero at the end of the episode showing that Barry is indeed telling the truth. And I guess we have to wait and see as to what Despero is going to do in Part 5, especially as that is the last episode of the Armageddon event. So yeah, all in all, not a bad episode, but not as good as the previous 2 episodes. It was missing that awe factor, as I like to put it. It was missing that factor that it had in the last 2 episodes. So I can't really say I'm too excited for Part 5. I'm actually like, I was more excited for this episode after Part 3 ended, especially after we saw the Reverse Flash cliffhanger, but this episode kind of like lost the momentum. That's the way I'd like to say for this, alright? So yeah. As for what I'd give this episode out of 10, maybe a 6 or a 7, really. The episode 3 would probably be an 8. That was actually a good episode. So, as for the Armageddon events, like as a whole, I will save that for when Part 5 is out. And yeah, I guess that's all I gotta say for this episode. Let's see. So we've gone through the relationship drama, which I mentioned earlier, and okay, actually, it's one thing I forgot to mention. Iris, like. Iris in this episode, I didn't like the way how she just decided to shoot Thawne. I mean, like, I know that the Barry and Iris are supposed to be a constant throughout every timeline. Apparently, that's how Eric Wallace was trying to portray it, but it felt very corny, for lack of a better word. Like I mean, from Iris's perspective, like, let's look at it. I know Thawne is being petty, but still, for this Iris's perspective, she has lived with Thawne. Thawne is the man that she fell in love with, so it feels very forced that all of a sudden she would just suddenly turn against Thawne and shoot him, and then giving Barry the time to, I guess, escape and reverse the tragedy that Thawne caused. But like I'm saying, I know the idea that they're trying to do is that Barry and Iris were a constant throughout every universe, every timeline, but like, they could have executed that scene much better. It just didn't feel. It just, for lack of a better word, it did not feel believable. Like, that's the way I like to say it. Like, the actors were trying their hardest, but I don't know whether it's the writing or what, but it didn't feel believable at all. So, I was surprised to see that. Like, I mean, like if you look at the other scenes in the previous episodes, they were a lot better in terms of quality, but this episode seems to be reverting back to some of the bad habits that the show had in Season 7. So, I'm kind of worried for Part 5, actually, as to how this will all conclude. Like, I wouldn't say that. I know I'm confident it will be better than the Season 7 episodes, because, like I said before, Season 7 was an atrocity, so it's not really hard to beat that season, but I do think that this quality might go down after the Armageddon event concludes, and that's something I hope that doesn't happen, but this episode kind of gave me that worry, so yeah. Anyway, so I know this episode review was a bit of a downer, but that's really how I felt about the episode. It really wasn't like as good as the previous 2 episodes, but Part 5 could have the chance to redeem that. So yeah, I will review that episode once it comes out. I will see you guys in the next video. Raphael out, and thank you very much for watching. Now, if you agreed with me or if you disagreed, feel free to comment down below, and I'll get around to reading some of your comments. So yeah, see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.